Twitch was conceived of in '98. So Twitch started in '98, and at the time I was very, very depressed and very angry and angsty, as they would say, a young adult, angsty adult, and I had just moved from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan to Calgary, and I was in a band in Saskatoon called Adam Hates You. It was an industrial band. We didn't really do any shows or anything like that, and we didn't actually record anything. There's one song that I did put together for Adam Hates You, but we never ended up playing it. We never ended up playing live, and I mean that was one of the reasons why I left Saskatoon, is because there was nothing going on there. There was nothing going on in that city, and I just, despite my efforts of trying to get the other members to play live and stuff, they just didn't seem interested in it. So I was like, fuck this. I'm not staying in this city so that I can do a whole lot of nothing. So I left, dissolved the band and left, and came to Calgary, and I started writing music, and I was using a DOS-based software called Impulse Tracker, and that was kind of what I was doing. I was writing music, and it's kind of funny, there was one song that I was writing that was going to be called TWitCh, but while I was writing it, my mom came into the office that I was writing it in the house that we were living in, and she looked at the name of the song and said, "You should name your band that." So I'm like, okay, and that's what I did, and I scrapped the song. So that's how TWitCh kind of came about. That period was, I was angry and depressed, and I was in a shit job, and there was some things going on with family too, like, that at the time I don't think they were ready to accept that music was the thing I wanted to do with my life. So but yeah, and it was just, granted, it wasn't that we weren't getting along, like we were getting along. It's just that there was didn't see eye to eye kind of thing, and they didn't understand that I wanted to live my dream of being a musician and all that kind of thing. And yeah, but that time frame in '98, I kind of, there's some things I realized, like I rather than being in a band, I prefer being in a solo endeavor, because I can do things the way I want to, and things are going to get done because it's on me to finish them, and I just liked working in that fashion. I liked being in a solo endeavor, a solo project, and that's kind of how TWitCh came about and evolved and stuff, and in the beginning. And even though the album was, the subject matter on the first self-titled album was, definitely negative, and I was just trying to get my shit out, there was still some positivity in it. Like, at that point in time, I wasn't really thinking about attitude. I wasn't thinking about what kind of message I want to portray, and that first album was more of me just getting my shit out, and which I did, and there was pieces of positivity on it, and I was kind of going in that direction, but I can't remember if I had a time frame of when I wanted the album to be done, but I was having such difficulty trying to get the music thing to happen with other band members in Calgary here, and you know, my best friend was over in London, England, and you know, we chatted on the phone. He's like, "You should come to London, man," and I'm like, "I don't know." And then of course I talked to my parents, and like, you go to London, you won't regret it. So I finished up the first Twitch release, the self-titled release, and made up a bunch of tapes, made up a bunch of artwork. It's all DIY style. Like, I dubbed the tapes in a tape machine. I had a Tascam Porta Studio that I dumped the stuff that I sequenced in Impulse Tracker onto, and then I had a friend do guitars, and obviously I did vocals that on the Tascam, the guitars and vocals on Tascam, and then took the Tascam and connected it to a stereo, and then because obviously the Tascam, the recording on the Tascam, the speed is different than regular tape recorder, so I had to connect the Tascam to the outputs on the Tascam into a stereo, and then hit play on the Tascam and hit record on the stereo and record to tape that way. And then after I did that, I dubbed the tapes, I think 13 or 14 tapes, maybe 12, maybe 10, I can't quite remember, but dubbed some tapes and put together artwork, and put all the tapes together, and then I left for London, brought those tapes with me, and then in London I ended up meeting with a friend who, not my best friend who was already out there. I stayed with my best friend, but there was another friend I had met here a month before she went to move out to London, and it's funny too, because she was like, "You should come with me," and I'm like, and at the time I was like, I wasn't even considering going to London, and I was like, "No, I'm okay. I'm gonna stay here and see if I can make things work." And then of course, I think it was 3-ish months after that, I ended up going to London, and I'm like wandering around like central London, like I think it was Piccadilly Circus or something like that, and I look to my right, and my friend, she's standing there and she's looking at me, she's going, "What the fuck are you doing here?" So I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm here now." So lots of weird shit happened like that. I would run into people from Saskatoon, I'd run into people from, you know, Calgary, or at least a couple of people from Calgary, and just weird shit would happen like that there. It was just weird, coincidental, like, oh, this is fucked, this is weird. But yeah, I met this friend out there, and she took one of my tapes, took a listen to it, and she ended up handing it off to some label guy. I don't even know who it was. Nothing ever came of it, and I ended up sort of handing it off to another tape to another label guy, and nothing came of that, and I realized I didn't want anything to come of that particular label, because well, that was just a shitty situation. So, but I did approach another label in London. It was I think it was Nightbreed Records, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I have this book called The Hex. What is it called? The Hex Files by Mick Mercer. It's the Goth. Is it the Goth Bible? I think it's the second Goth Bible that Mick Mercer did. And there's all kinds of listings and clubs and stuff in there, and listings of record labels and stuff. And basically, I brought that with me, and I was like, oh, Nightbreed Records is in this particular location. I'm gonna go in and pitch my album to them and see what comes of it. So I actually went to their physical store location, and I was like, yeah, you guys, you guys are a label, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I have this band. I didn't say it was me, but I said I have this band from Canada that is an industrial band, and they're looking for a label. And they're like, oh, you want to talk to this person in the back there, and just go into the back and talk to her. So I'm like, okay. So I go and talk to her, and she takes a look at my tape and go, why don't you pitch this to Canadian labels? And I was like, oh fuck, it pissed me off so much because she didn't even listen, that whole thing. Not that you can expect that. I mean, it was just it was essentially a cold call, except I was actually at the physical label location. And so it pissed me off, and I walked out of there pissed off. And that whole situation too, like at the time, Canadian record labels are not signing Canadian, at least industrial record labels are not signing Canadian bands. The majority of the labels are signing bands outside of Canada. So nothing ever came of my adventures out in London. For me it was just checking out the scene and stuff, and obviously I was still angry. I wasn't as depressed when I was out there, but there was a lot of partying going on, and just trying to check out the scene and just see if it was something I wanted to but do in a permanent sense, like live out there forever kind of thing, and kind of get my music career started out in London. But I realized it wasn't what I wanted, and I kind of felt refreshed to come back to Calgary and Canada and kind of finish what I had started here. And so I came back to Calgary and started looking for band members and had new ideas and put ads in papers and stuff like that. And there would be people who responded and stuff, and I'd go into different bands rehearsal spaces and stuff like that, and kind of not audition people, but see if they would be a fit. And sometimes I would consider sometimes, like there was a couple of times that people had asked me to be a part of their band as a vocalist, and of course I considered it, and then I was like, no, this is not really the direction I want to go. I want to do TWitCh, so that's kind of what happened. And then there was some people that like there was this bassist guy that I met, and I can't remember his name, but him and I were hanging out for a bit, and we were gonna do stuff, and then he ended up going into another band and doing stuff there. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I was actually ready to get started, because I wasn't considering things like rehearsal space and things like that, and how we were going to go about rehearsing and getting prepared for live shows and all of that. So there was another guy that I met. He was a keyboardist, and he had his own project. I can't remember what it was called. I can't remember what it was called, but I think it was called Amalgam, I think. And I actually have one of his CDs that he put together. But him and I were chatting, and we were gonna potentially do stuff, and then we just didn't. And he seemed cool though. Like he was into industrial, and he was doing his own thing, and he was doing like EBM type stuff. And what was his name? I think it was Jason something. But we hung out for a bit, and then nothing ever came of it. And then of course, I'm not making any progress, and then I end up getting not very. I ended up not doing very well mentally, and when I came back, I was always getting stuck in these mental spaces where it was like, I wanted to go back to the self-titled release and like repackage it into something else. Like I was considering EPs that and doing all these things, but it was like a repackaging of what was already on the album, with tweaks, and it was just a bunch of false starts and stuff. And it's funny too, because like there was this EP I was considering doing, and the title was going to be "This Machine is Temporarily Out of Order." And it's funny because when I look back on all that whole period after coming back from London and all the things I was considering doing, it was kind of like a foreshadowing of what my mental state was going to be and how it was going to change and how I wanted it to change, in a sense. And of course, after all the time trying to find these band members and trying to trying to put something together, and it was just kind of like all these false starts, and nothing ever really came of it. And then I wasn't doing very well mentally, and well, actually, when I came back from London, I had a bunch of a lot of anxiety, and it wasn't it almost ended up being crippling in a sense, but I ended up working through it. And then and the anxiety was more around life shit. Like it was like, I came back to Calgary and I wanted to get started, and I wanted to start doing stuff, but I was anxious because I'm worrying about this stuff because I want to get started, and it just, how am I going to make this work? And, anxiety happened, and fortunately I worked through it, and I was fine for a while. And then I got into this, after this time period, I got into trouble mentally, and I actually, out of all honesty, I kind of felt like I was losing my mind or going insane or whatever, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I just felt like I was I actually honestly felt like I'd lost my emotions for a bit there. I felt like I kind of lost my emotions, and then I end up dealing with doctors that think there's nothing wrong with me and all this shit, and I'm trying to I'm trying to tell them I don't feel right. There's something wrong. I don't feel normal, and that goes on for almost a year, and then I finally get into a mental space where I'm like, okay, I'm sort of okay. And then 9/11 happens, and shortly after that, I end up getting into trouble, and fortunately, I get a final diagnosis. I get into trouble, and I end up spending some time in jail, about a month in jail, but fortunately I start to get the help that I need, the help that I initially asked for, and finally get a diagnosis of what is going on with me. And I get medication, and the feeling I got when I just felt like after I started taking these meds, I was like, fuck, like if I feel so much better, like this feels right to me, like this is, you know, I feel like this is exactly this, like I felt clear-headed, and I felt like, okay, this is all making sense now. And that period was definitely a period of growth, and it was like, you know, there were things that I dreamed about doing that, you know, were dreams, and just that they were meant to be dreams, and not something that I would actually do. But there were other dreams that I had that were like, yeah, these are achievable, these are the things I want to do with my life, and, you know, be a rock star, draw comics, do music for the rest of my life, you know, and, you know, getting into the right headspace, you know, like that whole time period, you know, being in jail for a month, like, I definitely did a lot of growing, and there were a lot of realizations, and then there was my diagnosis, and there was a shift from the previous album to the album that came next, We Are Here to Dance, and my mentality shift. I definitely became positive, and my attitude changed to a positive attitude. You know, there's lots of growing up during that period, and things changed. And you know, it's funny because like I said earlier, like it's funny because like before this happened, there was things that I was saying and doing, and you don't realize that, you know, actually on the first self-titled release, you know, I'm saying things like I'm looking for peace and all this shit, and peace of mind and all this kind of stuff, and then it's like, you know, all this shit happens, and then it's like, you know, I kind of finally found that. I found that peace after all this shit happened, and, you know, my attitude shifted, and I wasn't focused on negative things. I wasn't focused on hate. I was focused on positive, you know, positive things and positive attitude and what I wanted to put out in the world. And life is just too short to be constantly angry, constantly negative thinking. I want to do things that are fun. I want to do things that make me happy. I want to do things that are positive. I want, you know, I think, you know, having positive lyrics generally, you know, it's personally, I think it's good for the world, and that's the kind of message I want to put out in the world. I think, honestly, you know, at least in my mind, it's something different in the goth industrial scene. Like, you know, there's, you know, it's I mean, this is stereotypical, but, you know, goths are supposed to be mopey and all this shit and depressed and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not. I'm positive, and I think the world and even people in the scene need to see that. I think they need to see that there's enthusiasm, and there's you know, there is a positive, you know, there's a positive voice in this scene. So yeah, that's kind of how the positivity came about. And over the years, you know, there was, you know, there's been struggles and stuff. Like there's, you know, there was mental things that I was feeling, but ultimately, in the end, most of the messaging has been positive.